Hi, this is Lady C. Welcome to the Critical Thought. Today I have the privilege of speaking with Brenda Lee, the author of Out of the Cocoon. We will be discussing her book and her very own personal struggles growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. For those of you that are not familiar with Brenda, her mother was a devout Jehovah's Witness, unyielding in how she raised Brenda, and even cutting off all association with anyone that did not ascribe to their teachings. This made it quite difficult for Brenda living in rural Pennsylvania and having no one to talk to. Today, Brenda is going to be sharing her life experience with our listening audience in an attempt to help educate as well as assist anyone that has a similar situation in their life. Welcome, Brenda, and thanks for being on The Critical Thought.
Hey, Lady C, thanks for inviting me on The Critical Thought. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you are so welcome. We're glad to have you.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
So, Brenda, can you give us a little background on the history of how your mother got involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Basically, I was about 9 years old, and my mother, who was a Methodist Sunday school teacher at the time, received a knock on the door and started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. And very, very quickly, our life completely flip-flopped upside down. She within probably 6 weeks, I would say, started serious Bible study where she told us that we could no longer told me I could no longer associate with my relatives, my cousins that I had grown up with. And she also told me that I couldn't celebrate my holidays or my birthday anymore. And that all happened in one day, which was pretty traumatic for a 9-year-old, believe me. And then by 10, within 6 months of studying with them, we were baptized. My mother, brother, sister, and I were all baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, she got you guys baptized in 6 months.
Oh,
so you
yeah.
didn't even have time to even digest all the stuff you were learning. You just get this new strange teachings, and then all of a sudden she starts taking away things from you one by one, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you got to get baptized now.
Well, and I remember the Watchtower Society, even in one of their publications, said basically don't spend more than 6 months with the Bible study if they're not ready to basically join us, then move on. There was some language to that effect. There is a magazine out there that says something to that effect. And I think that was about the time my mother joined when it was published. So, yeah, there was a lot of pressure from the Watchtower to get baptized quickly.
Yeah, because they always had a 6-month rule for everything. Because I remember years ago when they were changing different teachings, they would always tell people they would give you 6 months. If you didn't comply with all this other stuff they were doing, then you would be excommunicated and stuff like that, disfellowshipped or whatever. Now, what about your father? How did he react to all of what was going on here?
My dad was what I call a fence sitter. He went to some meetings just to appease my mom, but he never became baptized. And he did study with them a little bit at the beginning, but he basically said, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this. And he was excused from becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He did not have to do that. So he, for the next 9 years while I was involved, was somebody who was just very different in the way he took on his role as husband and father. One of the big differences I saw with my family was their relationship and how much it changed. My mom kind of wore the pants in the family. After Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on the door, she was very, very, very adamant about her beliefs and about what the children needed to do. And my father just went along with it because I think he really felt, he had lost his manhood. I mean, he just did not know how to handle the situation. And my mother, of course, had the elders on her side. So this one strong figurehead that I knew as a father really became very passive after the Jehovah's Witnesses came along. Yeah.
Do you think it was because your father didn't have answers and the Jehovah's Witnesses had answers for everything, and they could kind of fast talk the whole situation? Because a lot of people get intimidated when they come up against Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're not that, well-versed in the Bible.
Honestly, I don't even think it was the theology that got my mom. I think it was the fact that they were so nice, I actually even asked my mom that once, about a year and a half ago. I called her up on her birthday and hadn't spoken with her in over 30 years, and I actually have our conversation recorded on my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel called Out of the Cocoon, all one word, and there's a video I put together called Should I Study with Jehovah's Witnesses? They Seem Like Very Nice People. And in that video, where I talk about Jehovah's Witnesses, I inserted my conversation with my mom, and I asked her that question. I said, Mom, why in the world, and I didn't say why in the world, but I said, why did you study with Jehovah's Witnesses? What made you interested in becoming a Jehovah's Witness? And her response was, well, they seem like very, very nice people. And I think my mom was lonely, and I think she... here I was, 9 years old. I was no longer a baby. I was the youngest in the family. I was no longer dependent on her the way I had been as a younger child. And She was a lonely housewife in a rural area on a farm in rural Pennsylvania. And I think she just enjoyed the attention they gave her and the sense of power. All of a sudden she had a purpose. She could save the world. She could save her family from imminent destruction. I mean, that's pretty powerful, And so I think it was a combination of they were so nice and fear. They put the fear in her that Armageddon was coming any day now. And
Did your mother have any friends that you can remember before she became a witness?
We had, interestingly enough, we had family reunions all the time, every year, on both sides of the family. And I remember my cousins and grandparents coming over for dinner all the time. And we saw our relatives regularly, like I'm talking probably on a daily basis. And all that stopped when she became a Jehovah's Witness. At least for me, it did. I learned later that my mother did reach out and write a few letters to various relatives after I had left the religion when I was 18, and she basically just preached to people. The letter was full of scriptures and trying to convert them, essentially.
Right.
But she did continue conversations as far as being able to preach. That was her concern, She just wanted to convert is what she wanted, was
because she actually believed all this. But you do get that, because I remember when I was growing up in this faith as well, that a friend of mine actually showed me a letter that I had wrote her. It was like a 5-page letter, and all it had was a bunch of scriptures in there, and I put magazine articles and stuff and telling her to come back to Jehovah when she left the organization. So I can totally relate to that. Did you recall anybody else in the congregation that also had the same kind of a spirit that your mother had? Or did you notice that there were other people that seemed to do and talk to other people that weren't witnesses?
No, everybody in my congregation that I personally knew about was very, very strict with the religion. There was one family that would come late for Sunday services, and they seemed kind of like, quasi Jehovah's Witnesses. They were considered spiritually weak. But other than that, everybody really was devout. And it was a very, very strict environment. The congregation was pretty small. It had about 50 people, and there were mostly elderly people in it. I mean, I say elderly because in my mind, as a 9-year child, they were elderly, but they were in their 50s and 60s. And
so nobody your age. There's nobody your age that you can relate to.
Exactly. There was nobody my age at all. Actually, there was only one other girl that was even remotely close to my age. She was 19 and I was 9.
Oh, wow.
So I had nobody for 9 years, and we never went to another congregation. My mother never said, hey, my daughter doesn't have a friend. Let's go to a different congregation where she can have friends. That was never a consideration. She and my sister just kept making an empty promise to me that Jehovah would bring me a friend and Jehovah would provide. And, Jehovah provided for 9 years.
In your book, you mentioned that when you went to go visit your sister, I think you said she lived like 60 miles from you guys. But you said that you even noticed that she was not as strict as your mother. Do you recall how the friends were in her congregation?
I say she wasn't as strict because she didn't study the literature fanatically like my mother did. My mother would sit at the table from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 or 11 at night reading the same Watchtower magazine over and over again. My dad actually commented to her. He said, how can you read and underline all those words and highlight all those words over and over again? You should have digested it hours ago, you know.
Right.
My sister was.
So she was really getting a good dose of Watchtower teachings.
Oh yeah. My sister though did marry an elder, so she is very, very heavily involved. I think if I were to actually get her in a room and ask her how she really feels about it, I think she's disillusioned at this point. I ran into her in 2012 when I was in Pennsylvania. My dad was in the hospital in critical condition, and I thought he was going to pass away that day. And so I flew back to Pennsylvania, and I ran into her for the first time in 30 years.
Wow.
And she actually talked to me for the first time in 30 years because we were in the same room together. First, the conversation was very strained, but then we laughed and we joked, and we actually got along really well. And I kind of got a sense that maybe she wasn't as into it as, you know, my mother had raised me, for instance, to be into it. I got a sense that she was not happy. She's never, I don't think, been happy in her marriage. And I think, you know, her husband was always kind of abusive to her.
To your sister?
Emotionally. To my sister, oh, yeah. He was emotionally abusive, and he could do things like kick her and stuff like that. And I think, you know, she'd just laugh it off and think it was funny. And that was how she has dealt with the abuse all these years. I mean, even when they were first married, I remember him being abusive to her and thinking, what does she see in him? I would never be involved with somebody like that. But
because she had believed in the religion, see, and then because he had this position, and then she thought, wow, this is really, you know, this is from Jehovah, my husband's an elder, and people just kind of like let those kind of things go because they feel like they don't want to give that up, you know, because of his title. She's like in you know, she's all into the title of his position.
Yeah, I think that could be some of them. Also, the fact that they had children very quickly. She was 19 when she had her first child, and you know, their children were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think once you kind of get that far into the pool, sometimes there's no swimming out, you know. She was just, I don't know, she just did not impress me as somebody who was fanatical about it because she never talked about it. It was interesting. My mother talked about Jehovah nonstop. Every conversation was laced with Jehovah. And my sister
and your sister didn't do that?
No.
What about your sister in terms of working? Did she work a job?
No, she's always been a stay-at-home mom. I think she has worked recently in the past few years. She has worked out of the home once her children were grown.
That to me is a struggle because, like, you know, like we're like in our show here today, we really want to, you know, outline the fact about the struggles of women in religious organizations, Jehovah's Witnesses being one of them because that's our background. And I feel like a lot of times women, when they are involved in this religion, you have a situation where when they don't work, and the Jehovah's Witnesses will stress that women don't work because they can do more in the pioneer work and preaching activity. Your sister, no doubt, had her own struggles, and I wish I could talk to her today and talk to her about what her struggles are because that, no doubt, was one of the biggest things for her staying with her husband. She had no money. Yeah. She couldn't go anywhere.
She's dependent on him, exactly right. You know, I remember when I was a teenager, my aunt from Colorado Springs, and I had an underground letter writing network going. I wasn't allowed to talk to my aunt, but she came in one day and she cornered me and asked me how I felt about Jehovah's Witnesses. And when I told her how I really felt, she told me just to hang in there and to be a good girl, which in her mind was don't have sex and don't get pregnant, you know, essentially, and just keep hanging in there until you're 18 and then you can leave. And that was a revelation for me. I never realized that I could leave at 18. I didn't realize that I had that power. And I was about 12 at the time, and that was a very powerful thing for her to tell me. And that started the ball rolling, and that's when I started thinking, what can I do to get out of this situation? How can I progress and make progress secretly so that my parents don't know what's really going on. And one of those things I did is writing to my aunt. I wrote to her through a friend at school who was our mediator. She would take the letters I wrote to my aunt and take them to the post office and mail them. And when my aunt wrote back to me, she would intercept the letter. It would go to her house, and she'd bring it to me at school, and I would never take it home. All those years that we wrote to each other, my parents never found out until after I left the religion. So
your aunt was really a stronghold in your life to help you get through what you were trying to go through.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what I would have done without her. I think I probably would have. It would have been a lot harder struggle as a woman, definitely. She helped me get out to Colorado. She told me, you can stay with my daughter and her husband and go to school. And so I went to business college, and I got the skill set that I needed to get a good job out here because the economy in Colorado is a lot better than Pennsylvania, at least where I grew up.
Yeah, more opportunities. So, let me step back a second. In your book, I remember you were talking about your aunt was saying that you had to, come up with your own plane ticket. You had to move out of the house and be out of the house for a couple of months before you went to Colorado because she didn't want to seem like she was influencing you in any way. Prior to all of that happening, did she ever send you any money to help you out after you moved out from your parents' home?
No, actually what happened is she did send me a one-way plane ticket.
Okay.
She didn't ever give me money except to pay for my books for college. And then after I graduated from college, I had taken on a student loan. When I graduated from college, I paid her back in full, and I paid for my college tuition afterwards for 10 years. It took me 10 years to pay that off. But in my book, Out of the Cocoon, I write about the fact that I was pretty destitute when she intervened and helped me. I was living in an apartment in Pennsylvania and living with two other girls and literally eating garbage to survive because I didn't have enough money for food. I could pay the rent, and that was about it. And that was the part that I was trying to figure out. Because your aunt was helping you out, did you ever ask her for any help? I didn't. I don't remember our conversation back then. I might have been too proud to tell her I was starving.
Okay, because I was thinking, wow.
But I think I knew that there was a time frame in mind. I think I remember her saying you can come out in the fall. So I thought if I could just hang in there for 3 months and make it, I can get out of here, and then my situation will improve. So I just, like I said, I ate garbage to survive. And I was able to save enough, even though that's one of the reasons I ate garbage to survive, is I needed to have a little bit of money when I came out here. So I had like $50 in my pocket when I moved out here. And my aunt never helped me as far as food or anything, but my cousin that I stayed with, her daughter, Janet, and her husband, they paid for my dinners and breakfast and things like that. And then I would usually pick up a package of crackers for lunch. That was usually my lunch.
Wow. So you really did struggle. I mean, when I look at people, after I read your book, I really thought about how a lot of parents, how they give their kids money and they help them along and they don't really appreciate it after it's done for them. And then I thought about how you had went through so much, and then you look back and you see how you had to struggle and make things happen as a youngster. For all practical purposes, you really are still a youngster, even though you're 18, because they never really taught you anything that you needed to know to survive in this world. Because in the Jehovah's Witness world, it's like whatever's in the Watchtower, you got to believe that or not, and they don't give you much to survive on. So when I read your book, I was like, wow, you really did struggle, and I look at kids today and I think, wow, they're so unappreciative after all what you had gone through, and sometimes people don't know how good they have it.
Absolutely. My mom told me at 18 when I left that I'd become a prostitute and thief once I left because Satan had taken hold of me, and I had a former boss, read my book Out of the Cocoon at one point, and he said to me, he goes, wow, it's like they set you up to fail. It's like they set you up to fail, and then they go, aha, see, you're going to fail. And it was kind of a revelation for me at that point. I was like, wow, yeah, that's right. They really did set me up to fail. And if I hadn't had my aunt intervene, it would have been, like I said, a lot harder struggle. I probably would have really, really been financially poor. I probably would have ended up on welfare or something, who knows. But I took advantage of the opportunity. I saw it as a silver lining in a really horrible situation, and I jumped on it. When she offered me the chance to move to Colorado, I jumped on it. But you're right.
That was good. That was good to get out of Pennsylvania because, like I said, it's very difficult in rural areas anyway. And then, you had your family that was still there, and that the constant reminders of, what you had been through. Just getting a fresh start for you was really good by leaving and going to Colorado. What is your relationship like with your aunt right now?
Well, my aunt has dementia, and she's in assisted living. She's 93 years old. And
wow, okay.
She honestly is in a place where you can really have a coherent conversation with her. I went down to see her a few months ago, but she and I kind of became estranged from each other over the years. One of the things I write about in my book is one of my biggest things with my aunt is I wasn't looking for a substitute mom when I moved to Colorado, but I was looking for someone that I could talk to, emotionally connect with, because I had lost my whole family. And my aunt really wasn't there for me after about the first year. The first year she was great, and I was, able to get together with the families for holidays and stuff. But then, I met a man my son's father that I dated, and we ended up getting married in about 3 years later. And he was an alcoholic, and I think my aunt just did not care to be around him. And I wish in hindsight she had shook me by the shoulders and said, "What are you doing?" But she let our relationship go on, and I ended up marrying this guy. And I think it was hard for her to be around him and realize that I was walking this road, but
do you think that when you look at your life and you look and you see how your mother and father really didn't give you the tools you needed to survive in this world, your aunt, she knew that. Do you feel like she failed you in helping you make decisions after you moved to Colorado?
I wish she had been more involved, definitely. And I think I would have been the type of person who would have listened to her. Maybe not everything she said, but definitely she had a huge impact on my life. And yes, I think if she had stayed engaged over the years, my life probably would have turned out a little bit differently. I think if I had lived with her instead of my cousin, for instance, I think I probably would have met more educated men, maybe men who had their act together. And I was a very goal-driven person, very ambitious, even as a young person. And I kind of met the polar opposite of myself. And I latched onto him because he filled an emotional need that I had. Somebody cared about me. And I think if she had nurtured that particular need that I had, I think I would have probably not fallen for something like that. So, hindsight's 20/20, and what can you do? You can't change the past. And I wouldn't change the past because I have a remarkable son now, and he's phenomenal and talented, and he's a musician, and I love him to death. So I wouldn't go back.
You have what you would consider a learning experience, because when you look back on your life, you can definitely say that you could give advice to someone else about what you went through, and that's what your book is all about. What would you say to someone that's leaving today, that's facing the same situation that you're facing? What would you say to them about what not to do in your own personal experience?
What not to do?
When it comes to let me rephrase that. What not to do when it comes to the opposite sex when you're getting involved in a relationship?
I would say work on yourself. Everybody has a need to be loved and appreciated. Find a way to love and appreciate yourself first, and do that through perhaps meetup groups where you can meet other people and make friends and learn about other people. Date a lot. I didn't date a lot. My ex-husband was the first person I dated, really, because, as Jehovah's Witnesses, you're not allowed to date until you're of marrying age, which is about 18. So I left when I was 18, and I hadn't dated. So I think get to know yourself. Take your time. You change so much between 20 and 30. It's just unreal how much your attitudes about life change. It's a growing process, and you don't want to find somebody, the old you at 20, and then find out at 30 that you guys have absolutely nothing in common, or you don't even like this person. And
right.
that was kind of my revelation. My son was born when I was 28, and by the time I was 29, I was getting divorced. So
wow.
My son was only a year old when I was divorced.
When I'm gonna step back a second about the Watchtower in terms of when you actually discovered that this was not the truth. You're coming along. You're 9 years old. You're getting baptized at 10. You don't want to be part of this organization because you're wise beyond your years at that age, and you understand there's something not right with these teachings, but you really haven't gotten a confirmation that this is not the truth. At what point did you go on a search to discover the real truth about the truth?
2005. I can pinpoint it exactly. I was thinking about writing a memoir out of the Cocoon for my son. I wanted him to know me better. And I had never talked to an ex-Jehovah's Witness. All those years, 20-some, 25 years, I had never spoken to a Jehovah's Witness. And I decided to form a meetup group. Meetup was new on the web, and I decided to form a meetup group for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. So I founded a group for Denver ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and one person joined, and then 10 people joined, and then 50 people joined, and it just grew. And I remember the first meeting I had with somebody was such a thrilling experience. We spent 3 hours talking to each other. We were the only people that showed up for the first meeting, that we just talked and talked and talked and talked, and we had so much in common. And it was amazing to see how similar our experiences were, even though we grew up in different parts of the country. And so 2005, I connected with the ExJW community, and then I started a newsletter, which was read worldwide by over 1,000 people that I would send it to, and by email. And I did this on a monthly basis initially, and it really helped me because then I started doing a lot of research. I started researching the organization because I wanted to write about what I was learning. And as I did research, that's when the light went off. Oh my gosh! It wasn't just a feeling I had that this was wrong. It wasn't just that I felt suffocated as a child. This really is a cult. This is a very destructive organization that breaks apart families and lets people die from not having blood transfusions, and shuns people, and there's sexual child abuse running rampant in the organization, and that was just really revealing to me when I started doing a lot of internet searches and connecting with people like Randy Waters and Danny Hazard and Bill Bowen and Barbara Anderson, all the old timers that have been around forever. Right. Contact with. Yeah.
I think Free Minds was the first one we kind of got involved with when we left the organization. I'm just really surprised that it took you so long. How do you feel knowing that, the internet was out there, all this information was online, back, because I remember we got involved in the late 90s. We were online talking to different people about the organization. How do you feel learning about it in 2005, knowing that it was there for so long?
So it wasn't, actually. If you go online and you Google, Facebook wasn't around until 2004, I know. I don't know exactly what year the internet was available, but I think it was only a year or two prior to that it was available. It seems to me it wasn't out that long. People were doing emails and stuff, but there weren't big forums or anything like that for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot. I mean, Randy Waters' site was there because he was the first site we came across.
Yeah,
I want to say we came on the internet in 96, and we started reading about different things on there. And my husband, JT, he was on JehovahsWitness.net, and we were on this forum called H2O. And, I mean, that forum was only out for a little while, but it was strictly like a bulletin board, And when we left, when I got my computer, the first thing I typed into the search engine was Jehovah, and that's how we started getting all this information. But it's almost like, wow. I mean, my husband often says he felt really bad for people who left in the 70s because they literally had nothing. They had nothing to go on. Crisis of the Conscious wasn't out yet. It was a lot of different things that they didn't know. But you're right, the Facebook and all that didn't come out until later on. But do you think that things would have been better for you if you would have been able to have the information?
I think so. I think the healing process would have happened a lot faster had I had an ExJW community to network with in 1980 when I left. But I didn't. Mm-hmm. And so I figured it out on my own through trial and error, Luckily, I had a lot of common sense. I inherited my dad's common sense, and he's very frugal with money, so I figured out how to manage and survive financially. And, there was just a lot I figured out on my own.
When you left in 1980, that was even pre-Ray Franz getting disfellowship, so that crisis of conscience wasn't even out then.
Well, you want to hear what's interesting? Ray Franz and I left the same month in the same year, 1980 in May. We both left the organization. He left the organization and was basically kicked out because he was having lunch with his boss, who happened to be a Jehovah's Witness, and that was when they handed down the shunning too. Because prior to that, you weren't necessarily shunned if you simply walked away. But when Ray Franz left in 1980 and I left, then the rules changed. And in 1981, my mother sent me a letter with a quote in it from the Watchtower saying that anyone who disassociates themselves from the organization is to be considered as one who has been disfellowshipped, and they are to be shunned. So that was a rule that changed. My mother didn't have that rule in place when she joined in 1971, 72. But the rule changed, and then therefore she couldn't speak to me anymore. I've never been disfellowshipped. I have never done anything that would warrant disfellowshipping in their eyes, at least not way back then. Maybe I have since then. But, what I'm saying is that I was a pretty good kid. And I think that rule, I think if my mother had known that rule was going to be applied at some point later in her life, she would have never joined. I don't think she would have said to herself, wow, I might have to stun my daughter or son someday. I think she would have thought it through maybe. I hope she would have thought it through.
I think you touched on a very interesting point, though, what you just got through saying is the fact that when your mother joined the religion, there was no shunning in place the way it is today. And it's amazing when you think about this religion and how you sign up for something and things change and you're just expected to go along with the change or face repercussions. And I think a lot of people don't think about it like that. They just, because they're so brainwashed and they're so controlled in their thinking, that once the society makes a ruling or makes a change in their teaching, we just automatically have to get on board with that. And I think that's why a lot of people are leaving today, because they're seeing these things are changing. They're like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that, and then they're willing to say, wait, let me take a look at this and find out what's going on. And even on our page today, we get emails from people every day. We get comments on our YouTube channel every day, people telling us we left. I left 6 months ago. I left, and I always knew something was wrong. I always knew something wasn't right. And people are waking up all the time. And you have been very instrumental yourself in going out giving speeches and talking to various audiences. What has that been like for you? What kind of feedback have you gotten from your audiences?
Well, it's usually very positive. People don't know what Jehovah's Witnesses are about. They just see them as kind of a little extreme and annoying because they come to your door on Saturday morning. They don't understand how manipulative, deceptive, and damaging the organization is. And I always say the organization, it's not the people. The people are victims. The people are following the leadership who is, they're running a cult, quite frankly, and the people are under thought control, I've done a lot to try to raise awareness. I've got a YouTube channel called Out of the Cocoon, one word, and I've done videos. I did, my first video was Jehovah's Witnesses Encounter the Truth Fairy, and that was
I saw that. That was good. You did a good job.
That was a funny scoop about here's the truth about the truth, and then the second one I did was a takeoff on that one called Jehovah's Witnesses What's Behind the Watchtower Curtain, and it was based on the Wizard of Oz. And that
was a good one too. That very good quality too. I like the way you had everything set up in there, and your Watchtower article supporting all the teachings and new light.
And then I did a video called Cult Survivors with Membership Your Choice, because I think a lot of people feel guilty, like they should have been smarter and they shouldn't have made that decision to get involved. And they take the guilt on themselves, not realizing that they were manipulated and deceived. So I made this video called Cult Survivors with Membership Your Choice. And then the last one.
Now, how can someone, if someone wants to get to see those videos, what's the URL, the email, the address for that online?
Just go to YouTube and type in my channel, which is Out of the Cocoon, the name of my book. And it's just put it in all one word, Out of the Cocoon, no spaces, and it'll pop up with all my videos in there. And then the other thing I've done is I've spoken at groups called, I was at the Colorado Organization for Victims Assistance, COVA. I've spoken there multiple times to attorneys, child welfare workers, police officers, just all kinds of people who are involved in child welfare. And I've been able to speak to them and give my experience, which has been very, very well received. They have seminars where they have different tracks, and I've been a speaker in various tracks. And then I also appeared on The Secret Lives of Women on WeTV, Women's Entertainment, which is its cable program. And I think my story reached probably over 17 million people.
Good.
Or at least that's the viewership. So, and it was.
Let me ask you a question. How can our viewing, our listening audience today, how can we see that segment, The Secret Lives of Women, that you appeared on?
It's not available online at all. However, I occasionally run or share the excerpt of my portion of it. Four cult survivors were interviewed, and I was one of 4. So I have about 12 minutes on the program, and I share it with the other 3. And those 12 minutes I will share on my Facebook from time to time so people can see it. I can't put it on YouTube or anything because of copyright issues, but I do share it with my friends on Facebook. So look me up under Brenda Lee on Facebook. And Colorado, I don't know, there's a better way to, I'm not real internet savvy with Facebook, but just look me up and send me a friend request, if you're interested or a message.
Well, what I can do is with this video that we're going to be putting on, I'm going to be putting this broadcast on my YouTube channel. And so what I can do is put a link to your Facebook page there and also a link to your videos, because I'm sure people would like to know more about you. They would like to know more about your, the segment that you were on, The Secret Lives of Women, how to get your book and everything. So I'll put a link there on the page.
And also they can go to my website. I have a website called outofthecocoon.net. And think of net like a net, outofthecocoon.net. If you go there, there is an excerpt or a preview of the show, Secret Lives of Women, on that particular website, as well as I have various articles and blogs and all kinds of interesting articles on my website that people can read.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good, because I think that, like we were talking before about how there was no information when we were leaving, when you were leaving, when I was leaving, and how we were never really encouraged to read anything against Jehovah's Witnesses. So you probably never would have even thought to go try to research anything, And I think that's the problem that we're having with so many people. I can't even imagine how many people are sitting at the Kingdom Hall today, and they would like to learn what we know already, but they just don't know how to get to the information. That's another question I'd like to know about is, when you were in school, did they have a guidance counselor or anything to help children that were going through a mental abuse in the home?
Well, in my book, Out of the Cocoon, I do write about how I spent 3 hours in the guidance counselor's office one day, bawling my brains out and sobbing about how much I hated being a Jehovah's Witness and how my life was ruined and how I was thinking about killing myself and actually even fantasizing about murdering my family at one point. And the guidance counselor basically told me, hang in there. There's not anything I can do for you because you're a minor and your family has a right to impose their religion on you as a child. And she was just very sympathetic, and it helped me diffuse some of the mounting frustration I was feeling. So I think a guidance counselor in a school is an excellent resource because they are neutral. One thing I want to point out is that when I was a kid and I was 12 years old and I went to this guidance counselor, the legal system was very different than it is now. Back then, if you were a minor, the courts didn't listen to you. You had no voice, okay? And I knew that. And I knew there was a little I could do until I was 18 when my aunt pointed that out to me. But today, the courts do listen to minors. If you are 12 years old and you say, I feel like I'm being emotionally abused, or if I'm being physically abused, there will be people coming to visit. And I know it's a really difficult situation to be in, to be basically ratting out your family and saying, I can't do this anymore. It's a terrifying proposition. So I would tell people, especially youngsters today, if you're 12, 13 years old or whatever, a teenager, and you feel like you're bound in this very dysfunctional environment and you just can't get out of it, go talk to a guidance counselor, number one. Then see if there is a relative, a sympathetic relative that you can speak with, somebody that will know your situation, because they will listen to adults where they won't listen to children necessarily all the time. So find an adult that will get in your corner. And if you can't find somebody, keep going. Don't stop until you find someone, whether it be a police officer, a guidance counselor, a lawyer. Walk into a lawyer's office if you have the means to do so and ask for help. Do whatever.
That's really good information. That's excellent information. Yep. I have a caller calling in. Do you mind if we can take this call real quick?
Sure.
Hello, caller.
Hi there.
Yes, I was just listening, and I just actually tuned in, and I just really, Brenda, appreciate the the advice that you gave to children to, seek help from anybody that they can, guidance counselors. I love that. But the question that I have for you, and this is a personal thing that I've gone through, is I was raised as a witness, and then, I made really bad decisions, once I got out because I wasn't equipped with a lot. And I was wondering if you had ever, did you have problems with relationships, or did you get into I got into an abusive relationship when I left, and a very physically, mentally, all kinds of abuse from a man who was not a witness, but I kind of used him to escape from the witnesses and from my parents who were witnesses. And I was just wondering if you had any similar experiences in relationships or abusive relationships in particular.
I think everybody, not everybody, but most people who leave the organization at some point early on make poor choices. And I think that's because we were so, our self-esteem was so eroded, and we were so, we didn't have the tools to survive and to know what we need to know in the world. We didn't date. We didn't have the experience with people to know that there are good people out there who don't emotionally and physically abuse you versus those that do. And I think we all go through that. And yes, I did. I mean, I married an alcoholic, for instance. He wasn't physically abusive, but he was definitely emotionally abusive. And I went through a lot of stuff with him. Over a period of 11 years we were together. And then when I finally had my son, I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't put him through the same situation that I had been through. And so, I don't think that's any fault of ours. I think it's just we were a product of our environment. And I think the best thing you can do is learn from your experiences, try not to repeat them, and try to always think of yourself first. What do I need to do to take care of myself? Because that's key. Nobody's going to take care of you except you, and there are good people in the world. It's just you've got to surround yourself with them. It's like negativity draws negativity. If you have a lot of negative in your life and you're really unhappy, the only way to get out of that situation is to surround yourself with positive. And that's one thing I learned very quickly by the time I was 28 and I was getting divorced, I learned that I needed to get the positive into my life and get rid of the negative.
Right. You mentioned about, doing for ourselves. And one thing that we were taught as Jehovah's Witnesses is not to do anything for yourself. They always said, we live in a me society, and, it's not about us. So I think that's what makes it hard for, Jehovah's Witness women or people who are coming out of it to ever think, to do anything for themselves, because it's not where their mindset is when they leave. So do you have any good advice for anyone who's just leaving, so they don't make any mistakes like that?
Just get involved with a support group. Find meetup.com is a wonderful thing. You meet people face to face. They don't cannibalize you. They don't have a lot of dissension within the groups. Meetup.com is a great way to meet people. I would suggest if you get online and you go to meetup.com and there is no ex-Jehovah's Witness group in your area, create one. You can become an organizer. And then you can meet people face to face and make real, actual friends with these people and actually share in the same experiences and realize you weren't alone in the world, And then after you do something like that, face to face, then I would say try to get involved in the ExJW community online, which has its ups and downs. I must say there's a lot of dissension and there's some backbiting, and it can be brutal because there are a lot of people who are still very dysfunctional involved in these groups. But, get healthy yourself first, and I say the best way to do that is with one-on-one relationships with other people.
That's good information. Very good.
Excellent. I appreciate that, Brenda.
Yeah. And thanks for calling in, caller. We appreciate your
no problem. Have a wonderful day.
Okay,
not
thank
a problem.
you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Brenda, you're giving a lot of good information because I feel like, for somebody that's already been there and has lived this life, and you really have a lot to draw on, and you can actually help so many people because of your own personal experiences. What was your life like when you left and you got on the internet? Well, how did that go? What was your experience like online when you first encountered an online group?
Well, I'm glad I had my meetup group first because it made me realize that there are good people out there that you can connect with, and then there are not so good people you can connect with. I got online. I got on JehovahsWitness.net, I believe was the name of the website at the time, and I was cannibalized. I was attacked. I had a newsletter, and I was trying to let people know about the free newsletter that I was offering because I wanted to help people. I had this strong need to help people. And, I told them I was the author Out of the Cocoon, and then they accused me of trying to sell my book, and I was like, I'm not trying to sell my book. I just want you to know about my newsletter. And it just became a vicious feeding frenzy where I felt like I was being cannibalized by my own community. And I left very disillusioned and was really heartbroken that this was the way it was. And I did not get back on the internet for years after that because of that. I remember an ExJW saying to me, you should get on Facebook. You should get on Facebook. And I was like, no, I don't want to be part of any social group like that anymore. Because the problem with social groups online is because you don't see this person face to face, and sometimes they use anonymous handles. They can say and do anything to you they want and get away with it. And lots of times when one person starts in on you, another person joins, and then another person. That's why I say it's like a shark feeding frenzy. And you can become torn apart very, very quickly. I actually apologized after they tore me apart, and I said, I'm sorry if I offended anybody. I just want to help people. And I expected, I'm sorry we did that. We want to talk to you. What do you want to say? But instead I got more attack. It was called insincere, and oh my gosh, it was a horrible experience for me, very traumatic.
So based on that, and now that you are on Facebook, and now that you have found people online, and you realize that maybe it was just a few people that happened to, would you let people know that's listening that if they have a similar experience, to continue looking online for people? Don't let that be a deterrent, because
I would. One of the things great about Facebook is you can create your own page, and you can block people that are obnoxious and disrespectful to you. So that is the one thing about Facebook that Facebook has over other forums where there are moderators. In your own Facebook, you're the moderator. So you can control what type of response, not control the response, but you can control who you let in your circle. And I've had people
I agree. And I think that sometimes people, we because of coming out of the Jehovah's Witnesses and because of the way they treat us at the Kingdom Hall sometimes, we may feel like outsiders there. Sometimes some people have made that comment. So then when they go online seeking assistance, then they end up feeling the same way, well, like what you had happen with the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. And you're thinking, wow, this is what I had to endure at the Kingdom Hall. Now I'm online with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and the same thing is happening. So I just can't stress it enough for individuals that's listening to this program to keep on searching and looking for people, because there are some very good people out here that's trying to help other people get to the next level in their lives, because it is a struggle. It's a big struggle. And I think women, and I think men and women struggle together, but, like I said, women struggle even more because we're more downtrodden in the religion where we really can't have a voice in the congregation at all,
Definitely.
But I'm glad that you're sharing these experiences, because the fact that you came back online after your bad experience tells other people that you did find a place. You did find people to talk to that was helpful, and you were able to connect and get further assistance. So don't give up,
Oh,
in
definitely.
doing that.
And if anybody joins my group, for instance, on my Facebook page under Brenda Lee, I do not allow people to bash people and be very obnoxious and disrespectful. I allow differing opinions, but you have to be respectful about them. And if you're not, you're gone. You're not a friend of mine anymore. That's the beauty, of the Internet. We don't have to put up with abuse in our lives anymore, and we can choose not to do that. And there are a couple of really great groups out there, especially on Facebook. There's a really good group called ExJW's Witness Recovery. It's a public group on Facebook, and it is moderated very well, and there are over 7,000 members at this point. And it's moderated, and people are not allowed to attack other people. And so that's a pretty safe forum to go to. And it's run by Reuben Orts. He founded it, I don't know how many years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, I think. But it's really grown, and it's a great place to share your experiences.
I think I belong to that group as well. Let me ask you this. When I remember when I left the Watchtower, because I was told to be very leery of people that were not witnesses, and then I leave the Watchtower and I have to start, mingling with other people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. At first when I left, I know I was a little nervous. How did you feel, interacting with people that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, and did you feel like everyone was someone you could trust? Did you still have like a little barrier up with different people, or were you more trusting, or how was that for you?
I was very cautious the first 10 years. From 18 to 28, I was very, very cautious. I only had one friend because I just did not allow a lot of people into my world. And then once my son was born, I started connecting with other moms and other people so he could have play dates. And then I started realizing that it's okay to trust people. And now I'm at the place where I trust everybody unless they give me a reason not to. I accept every person as a friend on my Facebook until they give me a reason not to. If they give me a reason not to, then they're gone. But I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt at this point. But I'm also in an emotionally healthy place to do that. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing to do until you feel grounded and healthy yourself, because somebody can come in and victimize you so quickly. And now when people try to do that, it's like a water off a duck's back. It doesn't bother me. I can just move on and they're gone and that's it, But 10 years ago, that would have bothered me a lot, And
so that's still a caution. So you think that helped you out to make sure that you weren't really a victim of a lot of people by being cautious like that?
I think so. I think it's wise to be cautious at the beginning when you first leave a destructive group like the Watchtower, and feel solid in yourself. Feel like you have done enough work on yourself that your self-esteem is high enough that nobody can knock it off. I mean, nobody. There's nothing
I agree.
Say to me
it helps
that
you
would ever do that.
Yeah, because when you leave, because we weren't given the necessary tools to be able to like identify the sharks in the water, then we think, oh, I'm not a witness anymore. Now I can just talk to all these people. And I've heard of so many people getting involved with the wrong group just because they just wanted to hang out with somebody that wasn't a witness, and they wanted to be in with the in crowd, and they ended up really, suffering pretty bad after that. In fact, there was a brother in our congregation, right before we left. When we first came to that congregation, in fact, their son ended up in prison, and he was the model Jehovah's Witness kid, and it was really sad because he really didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness. And the moment he left the organization, when he got old enough to leave home, he ended up moving in with a group of guys, and that landed him in prison. And it was really sad. And when we came to the Kingdom Hall, to that congregation, we actually heard the story. I mean, he was the quintessential Jehovah's Witness kid. I mean, he did everything his parents told him. He was just the model JW kid. And then when he got old enough to move out, he was gone. And
those are the examples the Watchtower likes to hold up and say, see, this is what's going to happen to you if you leave.
Exactly.
And you know what? For every bad experience like that where somebody ends up in jail or some horrible thing, 99% of Jehovah's Witnesses that leave end up okay. Their life ends up okay. Most people figure it out and figure out how to move on with their lives. It takes time, granted. It's nothing that happens overnight. It can take decades, literally.
Right.
And I know that's hard for people to hear. I've actually had people say to me, how quickly can I heal? How quickly can I move on and not stop crying and missing my family, et cetera, et cetera. That takes time. You've just got to let time heal the wound, so to speak. But Jehovah's Witnesses paint a very bleak picture of what happens when you leave, and that is not a realistic picture whatsoever.
No,
at least the people I
know. That's why they. I mean, I feel like the example that I told you about the young guy that went to prison. I think they used that to try to hold the other people captive. Because there was obviously something going on with him. He was just faking it until he can get out of the house. But, of course, he got involved with bad association. And, of course, it didn't turn out well for him. I don't even know what he did, to be honest. I just know that was the story that was told. But it scares the other kids that are at the Kingdom Hall into staying.
Well, of course. That's how they keep you involved. They use fear. Fear is their number one tactic,
Right.
Fear of Armageddon, fear of getting ratted on by somebody else and told on and disciplined, fear of leaving and being thrown to the wolves and having the big bad world eat you up. That's all fear-based.
It is. Well, when you were growing up, did your grandparents ever try to step in, get involved in your upbringing to help out at all?
Well, my grandparents on my dad's side were already gone by the time my mother became a Jehovah's Witness. They had passed away.
Okay.
My mother's mother was still living, and she actually made me a quilt. She didn't step in. She didn't understand what was going on. I don't think any of my relatives really understood the gravity of what I was going through. But when I was 18 and I first moved out into this duplex with these two other girls, my mother wouldn't even let me take my bed or a blanket or a pillow or anything with me. She just said, basically, you want to go. You can have the clothes on your back, and that's it. And so I moved into this duplex with not even a bed to sleep on. And my grandmother gave me an old roll-up cot from the Army. I think it was from the Army that she had. And she quilted me a blanket, and I still have that blanket today. In fact, when my son was born, I had it on his bed covering him. So, yeah, she was very near and dear to my heart because she saw my situation after I left. And we reconnected. That's interesting. From the time I was 10 until I was 18, I basically didn't see my grandmother or spend any time with her. And so when I turned 18, I was able to reconnect with her through my aunt.
But she didn't think anything of that? Like, because you said she lived in the same town that you lived in, right?
Yeah, very close to my parents. I don't know what she was thinking at the time. My mother pretty much cut off most of her relatives, so I think she probably just thought that's my mother's nutty religion, you know. I don't know. My mother alienated a lot of people because when she would visit people early on, when she first became a Jehovah's Witness, she would go on the attack, and she would really shove it down their throats. And I would see her go to the door and literally push the door open. And somebody would say, "I'm not interested." She'd say, push the door open and say, "You're not interested in God?" And she would actually push the door open on a person's house. Can you believe that? And that's
yes, I can, because I remember being in the organization in the 70s, and witnesses used to push their foot in the door when you tried to close it, and they finally told them to stop doing that. That was the teaching. I'm not really sure if it was a teaching, but it was more so, it was a practice that most witnesses did in the 70s, where they would push their foot in your house. Yeah, they used to do that.
Yeah.
I remember that. I heard the stories about it. So, yeah, that was kind of crazy. So, yeah, but witnesses, they basically talk about the religion so much that they turn people off to the point that no one wants to be around them because they know when you come around, all you're going to talk about is the religion.
Yeah,
so I guess they kind of help you isolate your family where your family doesn't even want to be around you anymore, you know?
Right. I just want to tell you that something marvelous happened to me in 2012 when my dad passed away. I had not seen my relatives for over 40 years. This isn't in my book. I was able to reconnect with them after my dad's passing. And I went back to Pennsylvania, and I saw my uncle and my aunt and cousins that I hadn't seen for 40 years. And it was phenomenal. I went back for a family reunion. It was phenomenal. I don't know how to describe it. It's like being raised in the jungle and all of a sudden coming to civilization and having everybody embrace you. It just felt so wonderful to reconnect with everyone. And I'm Facebook friends with many of them right now, and it's something I've always wanted. I always felt like there was a piece of my life missing. My extended relatives who were never Jehovah's Witnesses, never studied or anything, I had lost them because of the religion. And then I was able to reconnect with them. The Jehovah's Witnesses did not steal away them completely. They stole my childhood. They stole my early years. I lost my family, as a young adult. I could have used motherly advice from my mother many, many times, and I never got that. She was never at my wedding, wasn't there for the birth of my child. But I was able to get some of it back in 2012, and that is something you can control. You can reach back to people that you were alienated from and try to establish some sort of relationship with them if you want to do that.
That's a good experience to hear, and I'm gonna tell you, it's a very Christian thing for your family, because when you think about the Jehovah's Witnesses that claim to be Christian and Christ-like, and how they cut people off and they're nasty and they won't talk to you, and yet you had relatives that you had left and didn't speak to for all those years, and when you came back and you reconnected with them, they welcomed you with open arms. There was no condition that you had to meet in order to be with your family. And I think that's the saddest thing about the Jehovah's Witnesses that I have, is that the same thing happened with my husband and I when we went back to our relatives that we pretty much didn't have anything to do with. And they were just saying we had been praying for you, that you would wake up and see the light. And so it was like a totally different feeling where you were around people that, they welcomed you with open arms, and it wasn't about what kind of life you had and what you weren't doing and all this kind of stuff. It was you were you. They loved us for who we were.
Right.
Not
Absolutely.
for what we were doing for an organization. So I'm glad to hear that. Very, very happy to hear that you were able to get that.
And many of my relatives have read my book Out of the Cocoon too, over the last couple of years. So now they really understand what I went through. I know a lot of them wish that they had been able to do something for me, and they didn't realize the struggles I had. And I don't even think my aunt realized. My aunt read my book, and she didn't even realize the struggles I had before I came to Colorado until she read my story about me eating garbage, because I don't think I had shared that with anybody, When you're young, you're proud and you want to make it and you want to be self-sufficient. And
how did she react when she found that out?
She said she wished she had done more. She wished she had known. She said, I put you in a nice community and you had girlfriends and you had a place to stay, and I thought you would be okay. I didn't realize, and I knew you were working. I didn't realize that you were struggling. I think that's the one thing is, if you know anybody who's an ex-Jehovah's Witness and they're very young, 18, 19, 17, 16, and they've left the organization and they're struggling, or whether they're struggling or not, reach out to them and ask them, how are you doing? Here, let me help you. Do you need some groceries this week? What can I do for you? Don't just assume that everything's fine because they're still living. There's
I agree.
A lot
you're right.
going on behind the scenes. Yeah.
That's probably one of the best statements you could have made during this conversation is the fact that, because we do know that there's a lot of people that know witnesses and that they do know that they have family members that are Jehovah's Witnesses, but no one really knows what's going on in the home. And then it's like years later you find out, now realizing you could have did a little bit more to help. And I'm going to be doing some research because I don't know. I thought it was 16 that you could divorce your parents at 16. Am I right?
It's probably depends on what state you're in.
It depends on what state you're in? Okay.
I think in Pennsylvania it was 18 at the time. It depends on the state and the law, I'm sure.
Okay, so that would be an interesting thing so that anybody that's listening to this broadcast would be able to know, to check with their state to find out, how old they have to be in order to get assistance to get out of the house, to get them some help.
What's interesting is I couldn't even get a student loan at the age of 18 out here in Colorado unless my parents were willing to sign an emancipation for me. So I moved out here when I was 18, tried to go to college, tried to get a student loan, and the state out here actually required an emancipation document be signed. And I sent it back, and fortunately my mother and father signed it and allowed me to go to school. Because I think they realized I think they realized I was done at that time. I think they realized that was it for me. Or maybe they thought by doing so I would go to school and come back, But I actually had to do that because I wasn't considered, I guess, an adult out here at 18, which was odd, I thought. Or maybe that is.
And I think, like you were saying earlier, that laws are changing and different places are helping children out more now. And so it's very important to go online and do research.
And, anybody can contact me, too, through Facebook or my website. And I help people all the time. I have emails and I sometimes I receive emails or I receive telephone calls and I've talked to people, over the phone for hours trying to help them understand what they need to do. I've helped people financially. I've done a lot of things to help people. So just keep reaching out until it can help,
At any point in your life, do you think you'll ever stop doing this type of work online where you're helping people to escape the Watchtower?
No, as long as my mental faculties are there, I'll be doing this. In fact, I would love to have a tombstone that says "Beware Watchtower" printed on it with my name underneath it. that would be something to go to the next generation because people have no idea how bad this group can be and how many lives it destroys. And there's so many people who are suffering out there, and it takes so long to heal from that. And it's a shame. It's something that doesn't need to happen.
Right.
But it's like buyer beware. I always say that education is so critical. Education is like a vaccination against cult involvement. And what you don't know can hurt you. And so you've got to know what you're getting involved with. Don't just talk to the people any group, not even just the Watchtower, any group you want to join, whether it be the Boy Scouts or a speaking group or any type of
selling
group.
Mary Kay.
Yeah,
they say that's
exactly.
like a cult too. Right.
Don't talk to the people who are trying to sell you the product. Talk to the people who've been there and left. Ask them what their experience was like. That's so much more insightful than talking to the person who wants to sell you the product. And
that's true. And I'll say this. Whenever you are involved in any group and they say, let me bring somebody in to explain it better, then that is cult-like. And it's even like multi-level marketing. When during the time I left, I had a person try to get me involved in selling some products, and they said, I need you to come to this meeting where this man is going to explain it better because I can't explain it the way he does. And every time I look in my life and I look at different scenarios that happen, I always relate all my experiences back to the Watchtower, and I always notice the similarities of everything in life because this Watchtower experience is what really helped me to see other types of schemes for what they are. And I try to tell people, do not think that just because you left Watchtower that you're safe in these other areas. You got to be careful everywhere you go.
Absolutely.
Because you can easily leave Watchtower and end up in another situation if you're not careful. So you have to be wise and know how to, what I say, use critical thinking when you're dealing with anything, in life.
There are yoga-based cults. There are self-help group-based cults. Besides religious cults, there are a lot of different types of cults out there that can prey on people's vulnerabilities. And so you're absolutely right. Don't think that that cult is synonymous with religion. Cult comes in a lot of different clothes out there, and people don't realize how many cults are actually out there. It's like over 5,000. It's phenomenal how many there are in this world. So, buyer beware,
Buyer beware. Well, thank you so much, Brenda, for being on The Critical Thought. I think that the things that we've discussed in our program today can definitely help a lot of people, women that are struggling, children, even men can definitely benefit from the information that we discussed today. And if anyone is interested in getting a question and answer session going, after this episode, we will be available to do another session where you can call in and talk to the author, Brenda Lee, the author of Out of the Cocoon. If you want to get more information about her, she has a website, outofthecocoon.net. You can also type in Out of the Cocoon in YouTube, and you can actually go to some of her videos. So, Brenda, we thank you so much for being on our program today.
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed being on Critical Thought, Lady C, and I would love to come back and talk to an audience at some point. That would be really fun to do.
Okay, great.
So, thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.